You've just said no. One single word, two simple letters. And then, instantly, the world around you collapses. The child who was perfectly happy just a moment ago becomes a storm of screams, tears, and flailing limbs on the floor. In that moment, a sense of powerlessness rises within you. You feel tested, attacked, or worse, you feel like you're failing as a parent. You try to use logic, you try to persuade, or perhaps you explode yourself to reestablish order. But if we could look through the fog of that noise, we would see a completely different reality. Your child isn't acting to get their way. They aren't intentionally making your life difficult. In fact, they are experiencing a state that psychologists call emotional dysregulation. Welcome to the reality of an overloaded nervous system. Today, we aren't talking about how to shut down a tantrum. We are going to dissect what actually happens when a small soul falls out of its own window of tolerance. Why can a rejected request, sometimes for something as small as a piece of candy or a toy, trigger such a massive, seismic event? The answer lies in the concept of the window of tolerance. Imagine the human capacity to process emotion as a cup. As adults, we have a large vessel, capable of holding the day's disappointments, fatigue, and pressure without overflowing. But in a child, that cup is tiny and shallow. To you, a refusal is just a grain of sand. But to a child's nervous system, it is a ton of brick falling directly into that tiny cup. When the water overflows, the child enters a hyper-aroused state. At this point, disappointment is no longer just a thought. It becomes physical pain. The child doesn't want to be stubborn. They simply no longer have the space to contain the letdown. Society teaches us to call this a tantrum, but psychology calls it defense. When the world becomes too big and too harsh for a child's capacity to cope, their brain has only one way to survive: exploding, to release the pressure. Let's look inside the machinery driving this explosion. When your refusal rings out, the child's brain interprets it not as a rule, but as a threat to their satisfaction and safety. Immediately, the amygdala, humanity's most ancient alarm and survival center, is activated. It sends an emergency signal to the sympathetic nervous system, releasing a surge of cortisol and adrenaline into the bloodstream. This is the phenomenon of amygdala hijack. In this moment, a literal coup has occurred in the child's head. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of logic, language, and self-control, officially goes offline. This is why all your explanations are useless right now. When the prefrontal cortex stops functioning, the child loses the ability to understand tomorrow, health, or saving money. They are living in a pure present of pain. They don't hear your reasoning because their brain is currently operating in fight or flight mode. The child isn't screaming to defeat you. They are screaming to avoid being drowned by the chemical storm, raging in their own veins. There is a strange thing that often happens during a tantrum. The angrier you get, the harder the child explodes. Why? The answer lies in mirror neurons. A child's nervous system is a highly sensitive simulation machine. They lack the ability to self-regulate, so they borrow the emotional states of those around them to orient themselves. When you stand before a dysregulated child with a mindset of panic or anger, the child's mirror neurons pick up that signal and amplify the storm tenfold. The child sees your loss of control and concludes, "Even my protector is afraid. Therefore, the world truly is ending." Conversely, when you maintain absolute stability, a calm that is non-punitive, you are acting as an external emotional regulator. Your stillness is a biological message sent to the child's brain. This storm is huge, but I am sturdy enough to keep us both from being swept away. Your presence in this moment is more powerful than 1,000 words, as it directly soothes the child's panicked amygdala, allowing the prefrontal cortex to slowly reconnect with reality. We often fear tantrums because we fear the loss of control. But from the perspective of developmental psychology, these moments are the most important classrooms of life. Every time a child experiences an emotional storm and finds their way back to stability through your companionship, a new neural pathway is formed. The child is learning to navigate disappointment. These are the very first bricks in building emotional intelligence. The ability to regulate emotions doesn't just appear naturally. It is forged through moments of dysregulation and subsequent healing. If a child is never allowed to explode, they will never learn how to pick up their own internal pieces. A child's cry, therefore, is not evidence of being spoiled. It is the cry of an immature nervous system working hard to learn how to exist in a world full of limits. It is a necessary, albeit painful, step toward becoming a self-governed human being in the future. Ultimately, a child's tantrum is not a problem to be solved with force. It is a moment to be contained with empathy. A child who dares to explode in front of you is a child who is placing their total trust in you. They believe that no matter how bad they become, no matter how much they fall apart, you will still be there, unjudging and unyielding. Don't look at a tantrum as a challenge to your power. Look at it as a silent plea. My world is overloaded. Please lend me your peace. When you understand the mechanics of the storm, you will no longer want to extinguish it with a bigger storm of your own. You will choose to be the lighthouse. If you've ever felt alone in these storms, please share your story in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.